I spent most of my career hung up on a number. There was a number that I wanted to get to. And my thinking was that I'll do these jobs, I'll do this work, I'll build these things that I don't necessarily love or believe in order to accomplish that, to get there. Because then once I have that money, then I've beaten life and I can live however I want. But not until then. And I spent 25 years of my career chasing that. It became this thing where, like, the only amount of money I could make to make myself feel better about the work that I did was more.
So welcome to the podcast. I'm happy to have you on, Tom. It's an absolute pleasure. This has been a long time coming, to be honest. A long time coming. We have had a lot of really interesting conversations, and that's sort of where the idea came into place. So I feel free to introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, sure. My name is Tom Cox. I live in Atlanta, United States, and I am an executive career coach. So what I do is I help mid-career professionals actually become executives. If you're somebody that's been kind of stuck at the manager or junior director level for a couple years and can't quite seem to figure out what it takes to move to VP or C-suite or other executive roles, we teach the mindset shifts that you have to make in order to actually achieve those levels in your career. So I've been doing that for about a year. Before that, I had a 25-year career in the satellite and space industry. 14 years of that was as an executive. And the first 4 years as an executive, I was a garbage executive. I was terrible, and learned how to get a lot better over the years. And towards the end of my executive career, it occurred to me that I was finding myself training more and more people on what it means to be a leader, to be an executive, to be someone that others can look up to and take leadership from. And I've just really leaned into that coaching aspect. And now I've built this coaching business and I couldn't be happier.
I want to dive into that. Tom, what does it take to go from a normal employee to then a leadership role as a VP, as an executive?
Yeah, sure. So there's 4 levels in any organization, right? So the 4 levels are, first, you have individual contributors. And these are the people who actually do the things. They do the work. So at Starbucks, these are the baristas. At Walmart, these are the checkout agents and so forth, right? So at the base level of the organization where most people get their start is at individual contribution tasks. And all you're doing is focusing on yourself and doing the best job you can with the responsibilities you're given. The next level up is manager. And this is where a lot of people wind up getting stuck. The managers, their responsibility is to manage the resources of the business, including the people, but also other resources. It can be vehicles and equipment and material and things like that, in addition to managing people. The managers are looking downward inside of the organization and looking backwards retrospectively to make sure that everybody is doing exactly what they're supposed to do based on how the system is designed.
Okay, so systems already put in place, and then they sort of just make sure everything is in place. Why do managers get stuck?
Because what they don't know is that there is a third layer and a fourth layer to the business. And the third layer is the one that...
So it's ignorance.
Yeah, it's this awareness of the third layer, which is the executive level. And what I mean to say is that most people don't realize that executives and managers do different things. So as I just described, managers are very inward focused and focused on the system internally. Executives are outward focused. They're looking at threats on the horizon. They're looking at the system from outside of it to decide how to modify the system, improve the system, change the system, or delete the system. Maybe it shouldn't even exist anymore. Maybe we shouldn't do that line of business anymore. So executives are thinking about the strategy, and they're taking the vision, turning it into a strategy, and then giving the plan to managers to actually execute that. And so a lot of people get stuck being a really good manager or a really good individual contributor, not realizing they actually need to demonstrate and hone additional skills that are executive level skills.
What skills?
So some of the skills that are really important, one is executive presence. And this is like how you show up. It's the gravitas, or the weight that you carry in a room.
The aura.
Yes, exactly. Okay. It's when you walk into a room, do people sit up a bit straighter and pay attention to what you have to say? Or do they not even notice you? Executive presence.
I want to dive deeper into that.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you make people listen? How do you make people sit up straight when you walk into the room? What is it about you that makes people do those things and respect you?
Yeah, great question. So we'll talk about executive presence for a second.
Okay.
Executive presence is made up of several components. And if you ask different people, you'll get different answers of what executive presence means to them. But a really intelligent person named Sylvia Ann Hewlett actually has done a lot of research on this on behalf of Harvard. And what she's found is that there are several traits, but there are three at the very top that are the most important traits that people can have in terms of exuding this executive presence. Another way to think of executive presence, I'll talk about these three in just a second, but I'll just say that another way to think about executive presence is, imagine you're in a restaurant and you're having dinner, and then in comes Brad Pitt and his entourage, and he sits down at a table, 20 feet away, and they're having dinner, and they're in the restaurant, and there's this energy in the room, like, oh my goodness, Brad Pitt is here. Like, it's just like this buzz and this feeling, and everyone's just kind of, like everything's a little bit brighter. And then when he leaves the restaurant, you feel the energy come down in that room, right? That energy, that's his gravitas, or his presence in the space, right?
That's a great
the three
example.
Things that
what is it
you
about?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I was just like, okay, what is it about Brad Pitt? And you wanted to go into the three things, obviously then touching on that, correct?
Yeah, and I just used Brad Pitt as an example, because I couldn't think of another A-list actor. But like anyone who's just kind of at that level, like, wow, that's a really important person. They just carry this weight in the space. And
what makes a person important? Is it the status, the money, the clothing? What makes them important in other people's eyes? I think it's different. Of course.
Yeah, in every walk of life, it's a little different, right? Like, so if you're into movies, then seeing Matt Damon or Brad Pitt in a restaurant is going to be kind of a big deal to you. If you've never watched movies and you don't care about pop culture, but you're really into sports, and you see Lionel Messi in a restaurant, well, he's going to carry a lot of weight for you. Like, wow, that's somebody I looked up to and, have watched play for years and years, right? So I think the weight that we carry is that those that carry a big weight are those that we look up to. And those are the people that are role models to us, or have accomplished something that we're really appreciative of. Like Tom Brady in the NFL is somebody that, I have to respect and admire. And if I were at a restaurant and Tom Brady sat down next to me, I would shake his hand and say, you've done an amazing thing. And, but whereas like other people that are, your idols, or people that I don't know, they would sit next to me and I wouldn't even know they were there. So
yeah,
I think,
crazy.
It's a little bit of like, understanding that there are people in our lives who make us feel a certain way when they're in our space. And executive presence is that for the business world, right? So there's presence that, A-list celebrities have, but then there's executive presence. And that is made up of several things, but the top three things that make that up. Number one, confidence. Not just confidence in yourself, but your ability to project confidence to the person you're talking to. So right now, you and I are having a conversation.
Okay, go ahead.
So you and I are having a conversation, and I'm talking to you in a certain tone, in a certain way. And hopefully, as I'm talking to you, you get a sense of confidence, not just in me being an expert in my subject matter, but that you feel confident that you are leading a good podcast here, right? As we talk together. And that projection of confidence goes not just confidence in me, but confidence in you, confidence in what we're doing, and that kind of projection of confidence beyond just, my intrinsic confidence. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. What is it about now you come across quite confident, Tom? What is it about you? Is it the way you talk? Is it your low pitch that you end on? Very matter-of-fact pitch? What is it about you and your demeanor or the way you speak that makes me feel this way?
I think generally, so there is some mannerisms, tonality, things like that are part of this. But more importantly, it's authenticity, right? So I'm not putting on an act to talk with you. This is like how I talk all the time. This is, if you watch any of my YouTube or my Instagram content, or if you just hang out with me in the restaurant, I talk this way. These are the things I talk about, and these are the words that I use. So authenticity is a big part of that. I think that being comfortable in your own skin and not feeling like you have to put on an act all the time, that brings out that executive presence. And that's what brings out the confidence component of executive presence.
I think that's quite profound that you mentioned that, because I used to be very, very insecure, Tom. Extremely insecure. Shy. I mean, you watched my transformation story quite recently.
Yeah.
I was the most shy kid you could ever imagine. I could not look you in the eyes. Girls frightened me, right? And just coming from that and being in this position I am right now, being a lot more confident, a lot more secure. The biggest thing for me was just, I used to be so self-conscious. Like, I used to always worry about, okay, what do I look like? What am I saying? Now, Tom, I'm completely detached from myself, and I'm fully immersed in the conversation and fully focused on you. And as a result, I can just be so much more confident. Does that resonate with you?
It does. You're using what I call presence, meaning that you are present in the moment. You are here. You're not in your head thinking about the past or wondering about the future. You're right here in this moment, having a moment with me. And that's really commendable. Not a lot of people are self-actualized enough to get out of their own head, and instead of focusing on what you're going to say in response to that person, just sit there and absorb the experience of them talking with you and absorb what they're trying to tell you. That's really that's commendable.
How do you get out of your own head, Tom? Because I think being present is so key to success, and I think it's so underestimated, because Michael Jordan talks about that, for example. Why should I think about missing the shot before I've taken it? I'm fully in the moment, and I know that ball is going into the net. I'm not thinking past or future, right? A little bit of future because I know it's going into the net, right? But how do you, Tom, how do you become fully immersed in the moment?
Yeah, great question. One of the tools that I use is a system called conscious leadership. And conscious leadership teaches us that there is a line. Below the line is emotional behavior, and above the line is critical thinking and logical behavior. So most of us live 99% of the time below the line. We live in three modes. We are either a victim, a villain, or a hero. And what that looks like is, a victim is like, they did this to me, they did that to me, they're responsible for causing my pain, right? They took my money, they took my job, they did the thing to me, right? Woe is me. Villains are, I'm going to do that to them back. I'm going to do things to them. I'm going to make them pay. I'm going to, get back at them. I'm going to hurt them, right? That's the villain. And then there's the hero, which is, I got to save the day. I got to do it. Like, I just got to get up and do what I'm told to do and do what I need to do and, do what people need me to do because no one else is going to do it if I don't do it. So I just got to put on these, shackles and carry my weight and move, right? We live in those three states, but if you want to be present in the moment and actually have this perspective that you have, a tool that I use is to move up and out of those three states into a conscious state. And in this conscious state, when you go above the line, I imagine myself physically separating me from my body and standing outside looking at the situation from a third perspective, right? So I'm up in the clouds looking down at what's happening. So if I were to see you and me sitting here having this conversation, I move up and about and I'm like, why is it that Dominic is saying that? Why is he acting this way? Let me understand, what's really going on here. So because I'm communicating something, but he's not hearing that, or he's communicating something and I'm not hearing what he's trying to say. We're having this, mix up in communication, or we're just not getting along, or there's some tension. When I remove myself and look down at it from an outsider's perspective, it helps me think critically like, okay, Dominic didn't have breakfast and he was up late last night, and so he's probably a little bit tired and hungry, and that's causing his emotions to be a little bit higher than they normally would. So I shouldn't read anything into his very emotional response. I should just accept that, like, hey, he's a human, and he's having not a perfect morning, so let that fall off my shoulders, as opposed to internalizing something. Like if you said something negative to me, internalizing that, like, Dominic hates me. What's wrong with me? I'm a bad person. Or he's mean. He's awful. He's terrible. Or one of these victim, villain, hero mindsets that we find ourselves in. When you can sit up and above the interaction with someone else and watch it from a third perspective, it helps you realize that, like, they're doing their best to communicate. You're doing your best. And sometimes that's still not enough information to communicate your thought to another human.
There's so many things I want to dive into, just so I correctly understand it. So we've got that line, got the emotional behavior, and then we've got the more logical behavior, right? And obviously we want to get to the more logical. And you mentioned the three types. You've got the victim, the villain, and the hero. From what I'm hearing is the victim and the villain are very much pointing the finger. Hero is more pointing the thumb, but he's still not detached, right? And then you get to above that, where you fully detach yourself and just look at your situation from a rational standpoint. I want to dive deeper into something that has helped me so much. By the way, this framework, I'm going to use it, Tom, because I have heard of it, but it makes so much sense. And the reason I want to go into this is because I believe everything is. And we decide if it's good or bad. We choose. We put labels on things. And that's why the words that we use are actually so important, right? And for example, I want to make an example with the weather. The weather just is. Like right now, it's Johannesburg, sunny, 32 degrees. If you ask someone that, I don't know, just had a strenuous workout and they're feeling exhausted, they would say this is awful weather. But for someone who's on vacation and just wants to relax, it's amazing weather, right? What does that tell you? Everything just is, and we decide if it's good or bad. Now, where I want to go with this, Tom, is, for example, we go through hard times, right? Now, we could choose to see it as a bad thing, or we could also choose to see it as a good thing, because, okay, in order for me to grow, it is required for me to be uncomfortable and go through things, right? So instead of viewing it as something bad, why don't I look at it as something good, right? And just consciously making that decision, but it goes back to your point of detaching yourself and then looking at it from a rational standpoint instead of being emotional. And that's why I think that is so profound. Tom, what are your thoughts on that?
Very well said. Very beautiful. I love what you just said in terms of, the weather isn't good or bad, it just is. And I'm reminded of I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Alan Watts. He was somebody who understood meditation and spirituality in a way that revolutionized the field in the 1950s. So he was an incredible theorist about, meditation and spirituality and human mind and connection and things like that. And he said the easiest way to get into the meditative state is to listen to the sounds of my voice, of the wind, and place no labels on them. Don't try to understand the words. Just let the sounds play with your eardrums, and don't assign any positive or negative energy to the sounds. They're just sounds. They have no improper or proper sounds. They're just sounds. And it's the same as what you're saying, which is there's no good weather or bad weather. There's just weather. There's no good experience or bad experience. There's just experience. And that's really powerful, because when you refuse to label an experience as a positive or a negative one, you get to choose what you take away from that experience. As an example, yesterday, I missed my workout. And it was because I was up very late the night before, and I had a 9 a.m. Call, and I woke up at 7. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to have time to do everything, before this important customer call at 9 a.m. And then the customer canceled at 8:58. So I could have gotten my workout in, except for this person. So I was frustrated. And I remember thinking, like, what a bad situation, what a negative thing to happen all day. Like now I've missed my workout for no reason at all. And it was just kind of like, this is bad. And I caught myself and I said, wait a minute, is it bad, or is it an opportunity to try something new? And so, it gave me the opportunity to come to the gym this morning. I went to the gym. I learned that the gym doesn't open until 6. I got there at 5:30 on Saturdays. But still, I was in the gym alone. It was an empty gym, and it was a pretty neat experience. And I felt myself feeling more confident to push myself a little bit harder, because I wasn't so conscious of other people around me. So I wouldn't have had that experience had I not had that negative experience, right? So positive experience, negative experience, or negative experience, positive experience, or just experiences. Like at the end of the day, you take away from things what you want to take away. And that perspective on your takeaway, it's 10% what happens to you and 90% what you do about it.
I wanna dive deeper into that, because I was about to go there, and it's great that you mentioned that. We can't necessarily control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it.
Right.
This framework, this exact framework, got me through one of my hardest times, which was beginning of last year. I was in the middle of nowhere, Tom. I was in Germany, in a little village on the border to Austria, and I consciously made the decision to leave South Africa and move there to start my entrepreneurial journey, because I was completely isolated from the world. And it allowed me to tap into a level of focus that I have never tapped into. Was it easy? No. And I went through one of my hardest times, and I came across the motivational speaker, Inky Johnson. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He played football, and he never made or the NFL. But his whole story was, he came from the streets, and he sort of sacrificed his whole life, his whole childhood, everything, to make it to the NFL. And his motivation was to get his family out of poverty. Just think about that. Now, he was one game away from being drafted to the NFL. He literally just had to show up to that game. He had to show up to that game. So what did he do? He showed up. 10 minutes into the game, tragic injury happens. Tragic injury. Gets rushed to hospital. The doctor tells him, your career is over. Just think about this for a moment, right? He sacrificed his whole life, one game away. His doctor tells him, you cannot play a single game of football in your life ever again. And you know what, Tom? You know what he responded? I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be alive. That perspective, just think of the magnitude of what just happened, right? And he responded instantly, I'm blessed. And in that moment, and I listened to that story again, I was like, whatever I'm going through right now is nothing compared to that. And it made me be like, hey, Dom, stop being a little bitch, okay? It's all good. We're going to get through this together. It's going to be worth it. And it made me get through that hard time, right?
Wow.
And the reason I want to share this is just because I'm such a big believer in you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it.
First of all, that's an amazing story that I've never heard before. His ability to reprogram his entire perspective on life in such a short amount of time is, I don't have that. I wish I did. I went through cancer a year and a half ago, or about a year ago, actually. I just finished up, and I remember like the first day, just sitting there in disbelief and fear, thinking I'm gonna die. You know, they're like talking to me about my will and, you know, DNRs and all kinds of things that are like, hey, we're really sorry, this just didn't work out for you. And
Holy shit.
by some genetic miracle, I happen to have a rare genetic mutation that actually saved me. But I was weeks away from death in the hospital. And I remember those first 2-3 days, I remember, you know, thinking to myself, do I even want to go through chemotherapy? Maybe I should just take the 4 weeks I've got left and go watch a sunset over Cape Town, or go do something really just, you know, impactful with that time with my family while I still have that time left. Do I want to spend my last few weeks inside of a hospital room hooked up to a bag with, you know, a long shot chance? And so I respect his perspective on saying, I'm blessed. I didn't feel blessed in that moment. And I did later. I will say that it took a while. There was a moment during my time in the hospital that was, it was the night that they put the first bag of chemotherapy into me. And so what they had done was put a tube in my chest. And the tube, they'd gone into my carotid artery and ran this tube into my vena cava, the largest vein in the body, because the chemotherapy that they were going to give me is so caustic for leukemia. It's so caustic that it will melt your veins. And so it has to go into the largest vein in your body and then pumped out from there as it's diffused. So they put this tube in me, and then they come in with these like nuclear gowns and masks and helmets and like 2-person integrity on these bag. And the bag is like glowing orange. It's like, wow, this stuff, man. And they're putting this in, and I'm still in this like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Woe is me kind of state of mind. And they hook up this tube, and the orange, it's like red orange fluid, I watched it flow into the tube into my chest. And the nurses leave, and I'm just sitting there alone, staring at this bag of orange fluid. And I remember asking myself, why am I doing this? And as soon as those words formed in my head, something happened that I'll never be able to explain fully. I'm not a terribly spiritual person. I'm not a religious person at all. but I can't deny what I experienced. And what I experienced was, as I was thinking to myself, I'm not sure I even want to go through this, almost instantly, I felt like I was surrounded by light and warmth. And I felt like I was inside joy. It's the best way I can describe this feeling. It was like this gold glow around me and warmth. And I felt very connected and very like everyone was there and they were all right here with me. And it was like nothing I'd ever experienced in my life. And in that moment, I knew three things. They were told to me, not in words, but in thought, I guess. And the first was, but for this chemo, you'll be dead. Therefore, every day that you live after this is a gift that was never promised. Treat it accordingly. And that was pretty profound to realize that, like, I'm in injury time, if you will, right? Like, you know, the game is over and I'm in, you know, injury time. And who knows how many minutes are left on the ref's clock, right? So every day is a gift not promised. That was an amazing gift. The second thing that I heard was, you have forgiven everyone. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, I've forgiven everyone? Really? Yeah, everyone? Including my dad? Let me think about him. And I remember thinking, yeah, actually, I don't feel anything, you know, but just maybe a little bit of sadness and pity, but not the anger that I carried throughout my life. And then the third thing was harder for me to understand in the moment, which was that your purpose is to teach. And as soon as this moment happened, as sudden as it happened, it was gone. And this was something that lasted maybe 2-3 seconds, the whole thing, but it felt like hours. And it was, I've never been able to recreate the feeling that I felt in that moment. And in that moment, I knew I would survive. And then 4 days later, the doctors came and told me that I had a rare genetic mutation that was going to save my life. And I was one of the lucky ones. And I knew that what I had been given was a second life. Confucius says that a man lives 2 lives. And he begins his second life the day he realizes he only has 1 life. And that time in the hospital completely changed my perspective on everything. I retired from my career and started a coaching business. I'd never done coaching before. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just leaning into this idea that, like, okay, I'm supposed to teach. I don't know what I'm supposed to teach. I'll teach leadership. I understand leadership. I like that. And since then, I found what I now refer to as my ikigai. This is a Japanese concept for your life purpose. And I think that in that moment, the gifts that I were given was the perspective of how short life is, the ability to let go of pain and hate so that I can move forward. And I was shown my life purpose, all in that moment. And I'll never forget the way I felt, because even now retelling it, like I can imagine being back there again and just feeling this connection that I'll never be able to explain logically or scientifically, but this sense that there is a purpose. Each of us have to find our purpose, and if you can live in that purpose, then you'll live a fulfilling life. And it doesn't matter how much money you make or what your house is or any of the things that we use as measurements, of our success in life. You'll just be in joy like I was in that moment. Yeah.
Tom, that is so, so beautiful. And before I touch on really all the details and where I want to go with this, I know a little bit about your story, and this is coming from someone. You mentioned purpose and detaching yourself from the material. This is coming from someone, correct me if I'm wrong, that very much chased the material for a long time in your life. Maybe just elaborate on that and how that shift has changed your life for the better.
Yeah, good question. So I spent most of my career hung up on a number. There was a number that I wanted to get to. It was a random number. I think it was 7.5 million. That was the money that I wanted to make. And if I ever had
Why that number?
7.5 million in checking, I would be able to retire and live however I want. And my thinking was that I'll do these jobs, I'll do this work, I'll build these things that I don't necessarily love or believe in order to accomplish that, to get there. Because then once I have that money, then I've beaten life and I can live however I want. But not until then. And I spent 25 years of my career chasing that. And it became this thing where, like, the only amount of money I could make to make myself feel better about the work that I did was more. More $100,000 is what I needed to make. Um, it was never enough. Even when I was making 300-400 grand a year, it wasn't enough. It was like it was never going to get me where I want to go as quickly as I wanted to get there, and unless they paid me twice as much or 3 times as much or 10 times as much. And it was just this incessant chase of, money, income, whatever. After cancer, I don't think about money in the same way at all. And like, I quit my job. I ran out of FMLA. Here in the US, you only get so long before your company can terminate you, even if you're sick with leukemia. And they stopped
Shit.
paying me, and I ran out of disability. And so I had no money, I had no vacation, I had no FMLA, I had no nothing left, and I had to go back to work, and I hated it. And that lasted about a month, and I was like, no, I'm going to do something else. This is not for me. I can't do this anymore. And I had started coaching people part-time and was, not making a ton of money, but just doing a little bit of coaching work. And I decided I'm going to lean into this all the way. And my wife and I talked about it, and it's like, if we lose the house, we'll buy another one someday. If we, she said, she's like, Layla Hermosi. She said the same thing. She said, I will sleep under a bridge with you if it comes to that, but it won't. And so my wife gave me the confidence to say, okay, let's give this a shot. And it's worked out tremendously. Now I make, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times what I used to make, but I don't even think about it. It's not top of mind at all, other than making sure there's enough cash in the business checking account to pay contractors and the tax man. I don't really think about money at all. I don't care how much I have. I don't care how much I make. Money is not what drives my happiness anymore. When I show up for my clients, when I get to talk with people and see their success, when I get to talk with other coaches like you about, what it's like to see success in our clients, those are the conversations that I live for. And it occurred to me that I can do this job forever. Like, feel like I have to do this for some amount of time to get to some point where I don't have to do it anymore. I could do this job or something like it for the rest of my life. Literally could coach on my deathbed and be happy doing it. So short of something awful like dementia, I should be able to do this for a very long time. And I don't feel the need to have to retire from it because it brings me energy. It gives me purpose. It compels me forward. It drives me. And so what I do now is so enjoyable. I would do it for free. I would pay you to do it.
That is so insane, Tom. And let me ask you, do you think that because of that shift, you've also been able to make more money?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Money is currency. And if you think about the word currency, it is indicative of current, as in motion. And currency is supposed to come in and out. It's supposed to be in motion all the time. Money is not a proxy for wealth. We think of it as that. But wealth is not best measured as, numbers in a checking account or a savings account. Wealth is what you have. And for me, I think of the money as coming in and going out in order to fund the business, to take care of the things that I do. The wealth is in the community. The wealth is in the conversations that I have. The wealth is in the success that I get to see in my clients. The wealth is in knowing that I can get on a conversation like this with you and talk about what I really care about, and talk about what I think is important. Wealth for me has become not about money at all, and ironically, as you let things go, they show up in your life in abundance. When you stop fretting about the money, it just shows up in, handbags, on your front porch. And that's kind of it's funny because the money that I make now, an older version of me would be yeah, more. And the version of me that I am today is cool.
I think that's it's so cool because the more I think of life, the more I think of it as dating. If you're not interested in the girl, she wants you even more. Let's be real, right? And the more, I don't know, because the way I want to go with this is because my story to entrepreneurship wasn't quite as tragic. However, I was at a point where in my life where I was working for my parents. This was about 2 years ago. They have a bakery. My father founded it. My grandfather actually immigrated from Germany to South Africa. Brought it up. My father took it over. And post school, I sort of had dropped out of college at that point. Pretty much a nobody, right? I was working for my parents, and my parents kept sort of implanting this idea into my head of taking it over, the bakery, etc. And they always said you can make a lot of money and it's good. And I mean, at the time, I thought that was a ton of money. Now my perspective is somewhat sort of shifts because everything is always relative. But the point was there was a lot of money for me and it was very attractive. And I was seriously considering that. But there came a point where I was like, do I really want this? Can I see myself doing this for the rest of my life? And I came to the conclusion, no. Because I want to be fulfilled. I want to do something that I can wake up and look forward to doing every single day. Because to your point, that is wealth. And I made the decision that I put myself sort of in the deep end. I was like, okay, in 6 months' time, I'm flying to Germany and I'm just gonna do this. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna be independent. And it's crazy what happens when you put yourself into the deep end. And a year later, I'm talking to you, Tom, super successful dude, and my life has completely changed. And I don't know, it's just incredible to look back. And the reason why I want to share this is just once you shift to purpose, because I started coaching in fitness and I was good at it, and I love teaching people how to do it. And I didn't, obviously, at the beginning, I wanted to make money to just survive, but just, I don't know, the fulfillment came in creating a beautiful product. Like, I got genuinely excited when you put the pieces together, and it's just like you're building something awesome. You're building something that can change people's lives. And that fulfillment, Tom, there's nothing like this. I tell my business partners, like it's a Saturday. I have a group call after this. Tomorrow it's a full day of content. We're creating new videos. It's what I'm doing, and I love it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And just chasing purpose has given me financial freedom, has given me wealth, to your point, and that's a beautiful thing.
I will say that I am a little envious of you having this perspective at your age. It took me getting cancer at age 47 to understand these things that we're talking about right now. And there's a part of me that's like, I kind of wish I'd figured this out 20 years ago. There's also a part of me that's like, well, you figure out things exactly when you're supposed to. And I needed to have the experiences, neither positive nor negative, in order to have this perspective. And so I believe we live our life in seasons. Or another analogy that I'll use a lot, a metaphor is, you see behind me these encyclopedias. We live our lives in volumes, right? So there's a chapter, but sometimes there's a volume change. And I felt like I've lived my life in 4 volumes now, right? And volume 4 is this post-cancer world that I live in now. And I think that, like, for right now, you are coaching this way with this business, grinding and hustling and doing the things to, create the content, to be on the coaching calls, to go through the, the reviews with all of the clients and all of the things that you do. There will be another season or another chapter in your story where that will look different. Maybe you're more removed from the business, where you're more as an owner mindset, which is that 4th layer above executive. Maybe you'll be thinking more like an owner as opposed to an individual contributor and a manager and an executive, right? And like that's the growth for you now, is to move up the stack of influence, so that as an owner you can use more leverage to impact more people positively, as opposed to if you were just a trainer, you could train one person at a time or 10 people at a time, and that's it, right? Like, as the owner of a training business, you can train thousands or millions, right? And it's not even the training that you teach that moves the needle with most people, which, that's part of it, right? Like, you've shown me how to do all of the movements that I've never done before in a weight room. And that's super helpful and important, but you're also demonstrating a mindset, a quality of life, a frame that I have seen have tremendous impact on the people in your community. They resonate with you. Like, they look up to you, and they see you as not just a physically fit person, but a mentally and spiritually fit person as well. And so as you grow, you'll find ways to project that mind, body, spirit, full connection, full realization that you have, in ways that people will be like, I want that. I want what he has. And people will want to follow you that much more, because you're demonstrating to them what it means to be, like your words, being present, being fully engaged in a conversation with another human being. So many people can't do that because they're always looking at these things. Really impressive.
I appreciate that, Tom. What makes a good leader?
I believe there's 3 traits that makes a good leader. I think to be a good leader, you have to be authentic, meaning that like you are truly who you say you are. You're not masking, you're not pretending to be something, you're not trying to deceive someone. You're just being honestly, openly raw and authentic and candid about the way you think, because that means people can understand why you have made decisions or why you are thinking this way, so that they can predict your behavior, and then you become comfortable and someone that they can know, like, and trust, right? So authenticity. The second trait is empathy. You have to be able to put yourself into the perspective of someone else. So when you have a conversation with someone, communication is what the listener does, not what you do, right? You can say words, but if they don't understand what you're saying, you didn't communicate your idea correctly. Picture a group of people, 16 people, standing in a circle around each other, and in the middle of that circle is an elephant. 16 people are going to have 16 different perspectives of that elephant. Some are going to see a trunk, and some are going to see a tail, and some are going to see both. And so the person who's staring at the tail is going to have a very different perspective on the same thing as the person who's staring at the trunk. And so empathy gives you the ability to understand the perspective of someone else. So there's perspective and perception. If you can perceive a situation from outside of it and understand that everyone has a individual and unique perspective, you can empathize. And that means that you can understand why, okay, yeah, I see why you don't think this is a cool thing, because you're just looking at the tail. You can't see what I'm seeing. It's amazing up here with the tusks and the trunk. It's really funny looking. Like, all you see is the ass, so everyone has different perspectives on the same thing. So empathy helps you actually understand how to communicate with someone else. A lack of empathy leads to, I don't care what you think. Do it as I say, right? And that's a bad trait. So empathy is the second. And then the third...
Just real quick, I don't want to digress too much from that, but I think it's quite interesting to me. I had this conversation with my brother the other day, how so many people just talk past each other because they are talking about the same word, but for this person it means this, and for this person it means this. They are not inherently disagreeing. They just see this word as different, and as a result they are clashing. And it's so fascinating to me, because if they just came to terms on, okay, what does this even mean to you? Let me understand, what does it mean to you? And I'll share with you what it means to me. Oh, that's why you didn't see it that way. Makes sense. And I feel like I was victim to this for a long time of my life, right? I had these certain ideas of words and other people didn't, and that's why we clashed, right? And just defining things. But to your point, just really trying to understand the person. Like, why is he thinking the way he's thinking? And it goes back to our earlier point of detaching yourself, right? Seeing things from a third person point of view. Go on.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I use the phrase "help me understand" all the time. It's one of the most powerful sentences that you can say as a leader. Help me understand why you did that. Help me understand why you think this is the way forward. Help me understand your perspective on this, right? Like, help me understand is, if even if you lack empathy, if you ask that question honestly with intention to understand, you'll gain the empathy you need to be a great leader.
That's beautiful. I like that.
And then the third thing that I think makes great leaders, so you have authenticity, you have empathy, and then the third thing, a trait that I think that all leaders need to have, is audacity. And I love this word, audacity. It has sometimes a negative connotation, the audacity of that person to do that thing. Well, there's good audacity too. In 2008, Barack Obama wrote the book, The Audacity of Hope, to talk about, an African American being able to win the presidency. Never happened in U.S. history before, right? So that was audacious.
What does
a
audacity
great
mean
big
to you?
thing. Audacity is the either rational or irrational confidence to believe in something bigger than you can accomplish on your own. And what I mean by that is, I used to say, my key phrase used to be build great things. And the idea is that why build something small when you could build something amazing? Why build something good when you can build something great? Why build something that helps some people when you can build something that helps all people? And I think that there are real challenges in the world that need real people to stand up and have the audacity to push back on whatever it is. And I find that the best leaders are the ones who are willing to try to do something bold, that they have not necessarily the confidence in their own ability to do the thing, but in their ability to create a team and rally people to a cause who can then create the thing, right? So it's like if you are really good at doing one thing all by yourself, like imagine you just built this business all by yourself. You didn't have Maya, you didn't have Jakob, you didn't have these people helping you build this thing. It was just you. You did the editing, you did the recording, you did the posting, you did the content, you did the calls, you did the nutrition, you did the software, you did everything, right? Like the books, everything was you, just you by yourself. I would say that's amazing, but it's not audacious because you are one person and your capacity is limited by your ability to be an individual contributor, a manager, an executive, and an owner. And as you grow into executive and owner roles, you have to delegate those things in order to serve more people, in order to achieve something greater. Audacity is the confidence in your leadership to know that you can convince people to come do the thing that you believe so much in, that you can make them believe in that too. It's that evangelical nature. Like Steve Jobs, he is the most audacious business person because he dared to believe that it could be different, it could be better. And he did that 5 times in his career. 5 different products revolutionized the industry. And it's still, still looked at as, one of the greatest, achievements in modern business, what Apple did. But audacity means believing in the ability to have others believe too. That's what it means to me.
I think that's amazing because, I mean, let's be real. Like, if you want to gather the troops, as they call it, you need to believe in something so badly, because if you don't believe, people won't follow you.
Right.
I mean, people talk about in sales, conviction being the biggest trait you can get to be a good salesman. Like, if you genuinely believe that this thing that you're selling is going to change that person's life, you are a good salesman. You don't even need sales techniques. Why? Because you are so convicted, and sales is influence, and influence is part of leadership. And that's where I'm going with this, right? And that, I think, where your audacity comes in, just being like, no, I believe in this, and I'm not going to limit myself, and I'm going to take people with me.
One of my favorite authors, a guy named John Maxwell, he said that leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. This idea that I believe there's 2 ways to influence people. There's leadership. And that is definitely, like, if you were to distill leadership down to one word, it would be influence. It's influencing someone to do a thing, right? And get them either to do it begrudgingly or willingly, but you lead them, you get them to do the thing that you want them to do, right? So that's leadership. There's another type of
so
influence.
you said begrudgingly or be willingly, so coercion or just willingly as well, right? you would
Well,
put
so
both
yeah,
into?
like there's this pyramid of leadership, and at the very base of the pyramid, layer one leadership is positional authority, and that's you do the thing because you have to listen to me, or you listen to me, or you follow me because you have to. I'll say it that way. You follow me because you have to, right? That's like the military is like this, or someone who's incarcerated. They don't have a choice but to do the things that the other person is commanding them to do. They follow you because they have to, right? There's another level up, which is, relational authority. And this is like with your friends or with your family. Someone follows you because they want to, right? Like, well, Dominic, like, hey, let's get together and go to the movies. Okay, cool. I'll meet you there. And then you're like, okay, let's go this way and this way and this way. And like, let's get the tickets and let's get the popcorn. Let's find our seats. And they're following you because they want to, right? Like you're the one that's kind of planning the outing. So they're like, cool, I'm just going to kind of follow your lead. That's relational authority. And then it goes up from there, right? And as you go up, people follow you first because they have to, then because they want to, then because of what you do for them. And then, or I'm sorry, what you do for the organization that you work in, then what you do for them, and then what you do for society at large and humanity, right?
Okay, so it's the bigger cause of the or the mission of the company, then it's their own pocket or their own interest, and then it's on a global level in terms of impact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. So going back to, so it's empathy, right? It's audacity, and then the third one was authenticity.
You got it.
Right. I think that's it's quite interesting because where I also wanted to go with this was I listened to a podcast actually before our call. When I make food, I listen to podcasts and I make notes of it. And basically, they talked about leadership too. And he sort of said two things. The best leaders bring generosity and humility to the table. And how he defined generosity was generosity is about saying, I'm going to put my mission above my ego. And I'm going to try to make everyone else in the room better. Humility is about saying, my job is to know what I don't know and try to learn from every single person I work with or come across. Every person you meet is a potential teacher. And I think this really ties into the empathy, right? And even the audacity side of things a little bit because of the putting the mission above the ego in terms of it's not I'm audacious because I want this and I want to be great. Maybe partly because we're all driven a little bit by that, but mainly for the mission, right? And I just wanted to share that because I wanted your thoughts on that, how you can mix that into your definition.
I love that. I love, generosity and humility. Fun fact about humility. You have to be humiliated in order to be humble. And, I love this because, like being a leader is, in my mind, in my estimation, it's finding the best people to do the thing and then getting out of their way. So I'm a very laissez-faire leader. I'm more of a cheerleader and here's the cause, here's the mission, let's stay focused, make tough decisions, but generally speaking, let good people do great things. And so someone who has humility is willing to defer their decision making to someone who they believe can make better decisions based on their unique skills and abilities. And then generosity is, in my mind, just another form of empathy. It's another way of saying to be willing to give the other person their due, their space, their time, their air, to be willing to, understand and appreciate what they bring to the table and see them. I think that like that's probably the most valuable thing a leader can do for someone on our team is to for that person to know, hey, I see you. I see you. I see the real you. I got you. I understand you.
Yeah.
And I think generosity is it's just another side of that same coin of giving people what they need, whether that's space, time, recognition, praise, structure, guidance, a shoulder to cry on, whatever. And all of that comes from being empathetically connected to that person on your team.
I think that's so cool. That's so cool because I think also the responsibility of a leader is, to your point, giving them what they need, right? Whether that is making them feel heard, giving them a certain responsibility, but also having the necessary hard conversation, right? Because I don't know, I'm sure you've seen a lot of leaders, but I feel like I used to run from hard conversations. Uncomfortable, right? Of course, it's uncomfortable, right, to have a hard conversation. But it's just detaching yourself. Okay, again, detaching yourself, right? What is the best thing for the organization and for this individual person too, right? Because if I genuinely want them to grow and be better, I shouldn't be scared of that hard conversation, right? And as a leader, sometimes you need to step up, not giving them what they want to hear, but telling them what's maybe best for them, right? Or having a conversation around that topic.
Yeah, well said. I think that leaders, like having hard conversations, is very much a part of the responsibility of leaders. You can't shirk away from the responsibility of having hard conversations. Doing so just lets a bad thing fester for longer until it becomes so bad that you have no choice but to make a change, right? So the hardest conversation is when you realize that the amount of effort you're going to put into an employee is never going to return that investment. And you realize that after you've made them an employee. And like they can be successful in lots of ways, but they're not going to be successful in this role at this time. And having that conversation it's a mixture of I messed up. I didn't hire or train or prepare you correctly, or I didn't screen for the skills that I really need in this role. I screened for the wrong skills and thought that the skills that you demonstrated would fit this role, and they didn't. So it's not your fault that this isn't working. It's not my fault that this isn't working. It just is, to use your parlance. It's not good or bad. It just is.
Yeah, I like
But
that.
you can't not have that conversation. At some point, you have to, have a conversation with someone like that. And I think that nobody likes hard conversations. Maybe some people do. There are people out there who are wired for that, but
Yeah.
they're not very empathetic people. I think if you are empathetic, that's hard because you have to let someone down, and you have to admit your failures and mistakes. And
Yeah.
doing those two things at the same time are really hard for a lot of us. So,
Yeah.
but it still has to be done. And leaders learn how to deliver. Like when I let someone go, I tend to say to them something like, I'm going to do you a favor because this role is not working out for you. I want you to know that I have a lot of respect for you as a person. I think you're amazing and you're going to do great, but you need to be in a different role. And this role is not the right one for you. So the best thing for us to do is to part ways so you can go find that role right now. And I'm going to help you as best I can find whatever that next role is.
I really think that is quite cool because where I want to go with this now is final thing I want to touch on is getting uncomfortable because hard conversations are uncomfortable, right? Now, I want to bring back the story of leukemia because, to be frank, that was more than uncomfortable, right? And where I want to go with this is there's actually a statistic that shows that the most successful people, they get rewarded for getting uncomfortable, right? Now, for you, Tom, looking back, that was a traumatic experience, and I don't wish it on anyone, and I'm sure you don't either, right? Looking back, how are you viewing it now? Do you view it as in a positive, or still in something that you would have even not wished on yourself?
You know, it's interesting that you asked that because earlier in our conversation we talked about, and you said that it's not good weather or bad weather; it's just weather. And I have gone back and forth about whether, was cancer a tragedy or a gift, or like what was the meaning of the experience? And I think that like I've struggled with that. Was it good? Was it worth it? It reminds me of like basic training when I went through military training a long time ago. Would I ever go through basic training again? No. But or I'll say it this way: could you pay me $1 million to go through basic training again? No. But could you pay me $1 million to take the experience away from me? No. Like the experience made me who I am. Same with leukemia. Would you, if if you paid me $1 million, would I go through leukemia treatment again? No. But if you offered me $1 million to take the experience away, no. So I think that whether it's good or bad is irrelevant. That's not the question. That it happened has fundamentally changed me. And I always try to take whether it's a good, bad, or indifferent situation and turn that into a learning experience. And that's what I feel like has happened for me. That experience it led to a positive improvement in who I am, but the experience was what it was.
That is such an interesting perspective to have, Tom. And even the fact that you mentioned you couldn't pay me $1 million to take the experience away, but you also couldn't pay me $1 million to make me experience that again. And I just think it's helped me view things or uncomfortable things as sort of it's required. Like if I only had sunny days, I wouldn't enjoy the sunny days because it would be normal. And I've come to realize that getting uncomfortable is where growth happens. And these days I just view it as, okay, I'm growing. Do I want to grow? Yes. So let me embrace this discomfort. And I think it's quite profound that you looking back can have that perspective on even something so traumatic. I lost my father at 13.
Mm.
That is, in a lot of people's eyes, very traumatic. And at the time, Tom, I was like, why is this happening to me? I don't deserve this. In hindsight, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Because from that moment on, Tom, I started getting uncomfortable. I went to Germany because it was my father's dream for me to become a professional footballer. It was my dream, but really that sort of pushed me over the edge of like actually going to Germany and leaving South Africa as a 14-year-old kid and being like completely new environment, boarding school, away from home. I just lost my father. And it was just that perspective of what would he want. And it's just crazy because I don't know if I would have done it even if he was alive because I would have been too comfortable. And just viewing that experience gave me that reinforcing behavior of when you go through discomfort, good shit happens. Now, the final question I have for you, Tom, is how can you have a very unique perspective? However, you had to go through some terrible things to get that perspective. How can other people not go through that and adopt your perspective?
So there's two ways that we learn. One is through experience, and the second is through proxy of experience. And that is another way of saying stories. And so I find that the best way to understand someone else is to listen to their story, to live their life for a moment. And so, like, as you told me your story about your father, and, I'm very sorry to hear that. But as you tell me the story of your father, I imagine myself as a 14-year-old boy thinking about the loss of my father. Very similar story. I had an experience. My father, he didn't die when I was 10, but he became a vegetable and was never the same. He had the mind of a 12-year-old for the rest of his life. So I was 10 when that happened. So I can understand, losing a father figure at that stage of life. But I can stand in your shoes for a moment and imagine that grief and imagine that confusion and anger and all of the emotions. And then I can imagine taking all of that and giving purpose to it and saying, I'm going to do this because it's what my father wanted me to do. And now I'm going to go and do this very uncomfortable thing in memory of him. And it becomes this mission, this thing, and there's something outside of you that compels you to move forward as opposed to just your own intrinsic goal of being a professional football player someday. It's your dad's dream, and now this is a way that you can honor him. And so, like, I get all of that from just listening to you. So, the best way to learn is to experience it yourself, and the second best way is to live someone else's experience and empathize with them and put yourself in their place so you can learn something new that way.
So, by the way, I've never had that side of things, and I'd love to soon dive deeper into that because I think that's very relatable. Now, you would say it's if they don't have to go through it, at least empathize or try and understand the other person's point of view, put themselves in their shoes, and as a result, adopt their thinking and frameworks or their new thinking and frameworks into their current situation and then view life differently through that story. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. Like, walk down past the slums or Skid Row, or just be around people that, for whatever reason, are homeless, hopeless, and just, instead of averting your eyes and not wanting to think about them, stare into their soul and understand that they have a human story. They may have mental illness, they may have a disease, they may have an addiction, they may have an affliction, they may have something that's brought them to where they are in life. They all have a story. There's a reason that they got to where they are. And I think, like, when you can look at the least actualized person and understand exactly why they are that way, it helps you understand how you can be more actualized yourself. Because there's a story for why you are where you are right now and not at an even higher level of achievement. And all of this comes from the more you understand about other people's stories and their experiences, the better it informs why you do what you do and why you think the way that you do.
I think that's yeah. Let's end it off here, Tom, because that is so beautiful. But just one more thing is the cost of ignorance, because I was just thinking of that. Literally, the reason I'm not at a million, 10 million, whatever it is because of something I don't know. And going back to that earlier point of perspectives, people's different views on life. Your view on life now, right? The way it's impacted your life is so profound. The same way, if my goal is to make a certain amount of money, if I just had, I don't know, even your viewpoint or someone else's that's making a lot more money than me, I would be making a lot more money because, and that's why I'm such a big believer in getting around these people, paying with money to get their perspectives that they have developed through paying their own money and time and effort and sacrifice. And the way I got ahead in life, I don't consider myself successful in any way because it's all relative to me. But let's say relatively successful is just realizing that money, I'm going to get it back, right? I have so much confidence in myself. But just, I want to buy other people's time and experience so I can get ahead in life. I've spent so much money on coaching programs, investments that didn't turn out the way I wanted them to. But you know what, Tom? I took action, right? And there were a lot of gems in that as well that absolutely changed my life. And the good dramatically outweighed the bad because I paid 5K, 10K for a program that didn't get me what I wanted to. But guess what? I still learned what not to do, right? However, the investment that then turned out to be right got me a 10x return.
Wow.
And it's just taking those bets on yourself, believing in yourself, and just moving, right?
It's beautiful. It's very well said.
Tom, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. It's been great. It's been great. There's so many things we could have gone into. We just even touched on one character trait of an executive, confidence, and then we digressed into all types of things. I think it's amazing, which leaves so much room for another conversation. So, Tom, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. And yeah, we will keep in touch.
Awesome, brother. It was a great conversation.